From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson Jr. Do not forget the JR. The end of the name is very important to remember, the Junior. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button to get the bell notification from when we drop that fire content. And feels like every day or every pod's fire content with the Saints on a roll like they are right now. It is Friday in the city and a beautiful day outside. A little warm, but nonetheless, everybody's in good spirits right now because the Saints are 2-0 and they're hosting the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. Should be a fantastic atmosphere, an atmosphere we hadn't seen in quite some time. And they also, Andre, will have a chance to do something they haven't done in a long time on Sunday. But before we get to that, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. You know, it's Friday. I'm dressed for high school football, going to Patrick Taylor versus St. Martin to see one of the best running backs in the nation tonight. And I'm going to see Carr Mac 35.
Okay.
You know, Carr's always good, but I know Mac, my dad's alma mater, is going to try to pull off that upset tonight.
All right. That should be an interesting day. And they also have a couple other big games. Shaw Rummel, another one. I think De La Salle, St. Paul. So a lot of big games in the city as it's week 3 in the prep football season as well. Also week 3 in the NFL. The Saints have a chance to get to 3-0. That's where I wanted to go with the big picture today.
Absolutely. This would be their first 3-0 start since 2013. If you remember all the way back in 2013, the Saints actually started 5-0 before they lost to the Patriots. Finished the season off 11-5. The last time they were 3-0 before that was the Super Bowl year, 2009. We all remember they started 13-0 before losing to the Cowboys. So now, Sean, with the possibility of another 3-0 start, what would going 3-0 mean for this team?
Well, not all 3-0s are the same, and it doesn't guarantee you anything. But like you said, 3-0, it's been a long time around here since they've done that. Back in 2013, which was the year after Peyton returned from his season-long suspension, and they were on a roll for the first 5 weeks of the season. Kind of hit a little bit of a rough spot towards that middle patch there. If I recall correctly, that season they were struggling on the road. But then they ended up winning a road playoff game. Look, it's hard to do. Like, don't lose sight of that. I mean, there's some really good football teams right now that won't have a chance to do it. It's hard to do. I mean, the Saints didn't do it in 2010. They didn't do it in 2011. They didn't do it in 2017, 2018, 2019. All of those teams were really, really good. Some of them the best in franchise history. Talk about 2011 and 19, 18, 17. Those teams were really, really, really good. So it's not a prerequisite or it's mandatory to get into the postseason to start 3-0. But it sure does help. So where I wanted to go with this today, with this 3-0, is I just cannot help but think back to where we were in this exact moment. A season ago, you and I both took the trip to Green Bay. We know that because flying to Green Bay is a little awkward. It's not the same as the other trips because you got to fly to Milwaukee, you got to stay in Appleton, you got to go to Green Bay, you got to come back to Milwaukee. So it's a little extra few hoops you got to jump through logistically. But I just remember watching that game. You were on the sideline shooting that game, and how the Saints were in complete control of that game. They were on the doorstep of 3-0 in Green Bay, and they were dominating for nearly 52 minutes. They dominated almost a full quarter after Derek Carr got hurt, and they somehow let it slip away. Just think about how different last season would have gone had they got to 3-0, because what ended up happening was they slipped to 2-1, and instead of, hey, we let one slip away, let's regroup, no, they kind of was the start to the tailspin of win 1, lose 2, win 1. Like, it was a crazy up and down to the final 5 weeks of the season where they won 4 out of 5. That's where the tailspin really began. And when everybody looks at last season, they point to that game. So 3-0 in that sense would have meant the playoffs, because if you add everything else up, you just get that win. The only win, the only game of the season I truly felt like the team that played the best did not win the game was that game in Green Bay. So that, to me, when I think about 3-0 and how important it is, just look to last year. I mean, think about how different 2023 would have been had they started 3-0, and just the 2-0 last year wasn't quite the same. It was a little grindy. It wasn't like the most impressive victories. It was more like grinded out, typical September type wins. And they were so close to 3-0. I remember Jordan Love looked awful. Looked awful for the first 3.5 quarters of that game. All of a sudden, he made a couple passes, connected a little bit, grew some confidence, and they stole one. Look, the Saints had a chance to win it, and Blake Grupe missed the field goal. So that's really them not getting to 3-0 last year kind of started the slide, which brings me to my next point, and this is an important point because if they somehow don't get to 3-0 Sunday, which I'm predicting them to get to 3-0, but if they don't and they let one get away and they fall to 2-1, they can't let what happened last year happen to them this year. You're still 2-1 if that were the case. Last year, it's almost like when they lost that game, they lost all confidence. And Carr was hurt. There was uncertainty about whether or not he'd be back. Obviously, he never missed a start, but we found out later he really wasn't the same player health-wise until probably closer to late November into December. You can't let that happen again. You just cannot let that happen again. And this will be much different. You're coming off of 2 blowout wins back at home. This will not be on the road. And this home crowd now wants to see you back home. Jeez. Unlike last year where they weren't so sure about whether or not they wanted that team to be playing their best or wanted to see that team up close inside the Superdome. You can just cut that anxiety with a knife, that tension with a knife last year inside the Superdome. So 3-0 with this schedule, beating back-to-back NFC East Super Bowl contenders, that would catapult them all the way to the top. They're in the spotlight right now. They're not a secret right now. Everybody understands that. You look at the power rankings, you look at the talk. Just look around the national media interviews right now. Tyrann Mathieu did something with Good Morning Football. Rich Eisen show had Dennis Allen. I'm not sure if Derek Carr did anything this week, but the national media is there. You don't start the season the way they started without getting that notoriety. But to go to 3-0 and beating the Eagles, a team that has been sort of a thorn in your side, especially with this quarterback, that all of a sudden puts you at the top of the list. And all of a sudden it's, okay, this is a playoff team. Because if they get to 3-0, that's going to be the discussion. And rightfully so. That's what comes with a 3-0 start is it's no longer, hey, it's September, it's early. It's this could be a playoff type season. And if the math holds up, usually that ends up being the case, especially if you go back, date back to 2006. Now, before 2006, I recall 2002, they started 3-0. I think there was one of the Dickey years they started 3-0. And I remember 93 with Jim Moore, they started 3-0. Those 3 didn't make the playoffs. But since 2006, every 3-0 start has led to a playoff appearance. So that's going to be the talk, even though it is September and things are not nearly a finished product yet. But that's what it would mean. There's a whole lot of buzz. And there's a whole lot of alignment to 3-0 this year to coming so close to 3-0 last year and how that kind of spun things out of control, where this year you just feel like you're firmly in control of everything.
Sean, you mentioned playoffs, and we both know Saints fans. We both grew up in the city. We both are very familiar with Saints fans, and they have a song. And it's not called Black and Gold to the playoffs. It's called Black and Gold to the Super Bowl. And that is what correct. They're going to be talking if the Saints start 3-0 and beat the Philadelphia Eagles, because at that point, I don't think you can argue with the resume that they've put up so far that the Saints would be legitimate Super Bowl contenders. Not saying they'll make it there, especially with the Super Bowl in the city. The Saints would be legitimate Super Bowl contenders. We knew that they would beat Carolina. The Panthers are not very good. We know that. But Dallas, the way they beat Dallas, that's a big win. Beating Philadelphia, that's a great win. Dallas has been in the playoffs in each of their last 3 seasons. Philadelphia has been in the playoffs in 6 of their last 7 seasons, and that includes 2 trips to the Super Bowl. Both of those teams have been among the best that the NFC has to offer in recent history. The Saints just went to Dallas, a place where that team hasn't lost.
They don't lose
in 2 years, and they beat the brakes off of them. Now you bring Philadelphia in, a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, someone who has plagued the Saints defensively because Jalen Hurts is a running quarterback, and we know this team has struggled with those. If you beat Philadelphia and that offense is still rolling the way it does, I think that at that point we're talking Super Bowl, because we've already started to see the narrative surrounding this team shift. A lot of people were saying, Saints are really impressive. They've been talking about them on the big shows, but it kind of felt like to me it was more because they beat Dallas, America's team. It was
yeah.
more Dallas lost.
Well, the
than
initial
Saints
reaction was
won.
what's wrong with Dallas.
Exactly.
And then came the Saints' praise.
Exactly. It was all, Dallas lost more than the Saints went in there and beat them. I think if the Saints come in and beat Philadelphia, we're going to continue to see that national narrative shift, and it's not going to be about what the other team did wrong. It'll be about, look at this team, because there's one every year. Look at this team that came out of nowhere seemingly and is setting the league on fire. And I think you start 3-0, that'll be the Saints.
Just so we're clear, because I don't want people listening to get confused.
Yeah.
You're not saying if they start the 3-0, they're going to make the Super Bowl.
Correct.
You're saying,
I'm not saying
the
that.
talk will then get to they start 3-0, this town's going to go crazy, and they're going to talk. There's going to be Super Bowl aspirations.
We were just watching the 4 o'clock news on Fox 8, and at a medical center, midday, they're outside having a party playing Chopper Style. I'm saying a lot of Saints will start saying black and gold to the Super Bowl. You're going to hear it around the city all the time, a lot more than you heard last year around this time, and the national narrative will start talking about the Saints as a possible team in the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're going. I'm just saying that'll be the talk that starts around this team.
I'm so looking forward to the atmosphere Sunday, because I think they were caught off guard with just how quickly they were going to kind of overwhelm Carolina, and it was like what is this? Oh my goodness type crowd. Now they're ready for it. This is going to be electric. It's going to be the Superdome that we all know when the team is rolling, and right now they are rolling. It's interesting, you mentioned this stuff at the 4 o'clock news with the medical center. The city hasn't had a murder in 18 days.
Yep.
I mean, like we want to joke about it, but the truth of the matter is, the Saints winning puts everyone in a good mood. It's like I don't think it's any coincidence. I know it's crazy for some people to think, but look, when the Saints are winning, everybody's happy, and all of a sudden, the crime rate dips. I mean, look. So it's for the life of the city. Maybe literally, it's good for the New Orleans Saints to be winning, because man, when it's boring or when it's bad or when it's up and down and you just can't get a read and there's just frustration, it spills over. It just puts everybody in a funk. But they've successfly jumped like the hurdle of, even last year, some of the wins, it was kind of a guarded celebration from the fan base. They have catapulted into fan bases, but the fan base just want something to believe in. And they're not a dumb fan base. They're a smart fan base. They understand what good football looks like. And this is good football, what they're seeing. So I think talk about what would 3-0 mean? Well, look what 2-0 has meant.
Yep.
Now add one more, 3-0. I think it would mean a whole lot to the city. I should mention though, because I've been in the locker room this week. There is genuine enthusiasm. You can feel it. There's genuine smiles on everyone's faces. You can see it. But I think they're doing their best to stay grounded. I mean, we probably asked Derek Carr about 3 or 4 times about that Wednesday. Just, new week, new challenge. How important is it to stay focused? Because look, when you get this kind of success, not so much the coaches, because the coaches are always in the office, but the players get out a little bit. I mean, they got families. They're gonna go to the grocery store. They're gonna go to a restaurant, whatever the case may be. That's when it really starts to add up in terms of the excitement and the enthusiasm around the team. That's when it gets a little challenging to make sure you stay kind of insulated and guarded and really focused on the task at hand. Because Philadelphia, as much as we're singing the Saints' praises, make no mistake about it, Philadelphia is fully capable of coming in here Sunday and beating the Saints.
Absolutely. And you mentioned them getting out. I hear sources tell me the Saints quarterbacks and offensive linemen were at a dinner at a restaurant in the area recently, and obviously the restaurant was very excited to see really the heroes of the city walk in right now. But like you said, Philadelphia is no slouch. You've got Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. That is a really good dynamic duo when it comes to running the ball. Jalen Hurts very dangerous. Now, he won't have his number one receiver. That came out today in the injury report. A.J. Brown will be out for that game, but you still got a Louisiana guy in Devontae Smith, and when those Louisiana guys come home, Devontae's going to probably have dozens of friends and family in the stands at the Super Bowl. He's going to want to show out. I mentioned the injury report. You're going to have some good news in there.
Yeah, why don't you read that off?
Right. A guy who we've talked about as being uncertain. He was a full participant in practice today. Marshawn Lattimore looks like he's good to go.
He's going, yeah.
Rashid Shaheed, full participant in practice all week. He'll go. Taliese Fuaga, another full participant in practice. He'll go. Tyrann Mathieu, limited on Wednesday and Thursday, full participant in practice. All of those guys expected to go on Sunday. The one guy we know for sure is out for the third straight game. That's going to be defensive tackle Colin Saunders. And we've got 5 guys who are questionable. A.T. Perry with an illness. Will Harris with a shin injury. You've got Landon Young. You've got DeMarco Jackson. And the biggest one potentially, still questionable, is Taysom Hill.
That's an interesting list. Obviously, the name everyone's going to go to is Taysom Hill because we've talked about it a lot on this pod. We talked about it a lot on our shows. Clint Kubiak is having a ball with Taysom Hill, even if it's not the ball in Taysom Hill's hands. He's having, because of what Taysom is doing from a personnel grouping standpoint, from a just clouding the decision-making process of the defense and what the information they're providing, just by him being on the field, you could tell a brain like Kubiak and a staff like the Saints offensive staff is really starting to enjoy that. So I think it's crucial that Taysom Hill is there, just for even if he doesn't touch the ball, for no other reason than just what I just said, because they're putting him in so many different spots very early in games just to gather information, gather intel, that I think Kubiak is really starting to lean on that. Now, look, if he can't go, you can't turn to the backup Taysom. There is no backup Taysom. But the fact that he got limited work Thursday, limited work Friday, to me is a good sign, an encouraging sign. Hopefully he's able to go Sunday. If he can't go, you'll see a lot of Juwan Johnson. Wouldn't be surprised if you saw a little more Dallin Holker get called up. I'd be very curious to see how they approach things from a personnel grouping standpoint if Taysom cannot go. But that's encouraging news that he should be able to, they got on the field, did some work Thursday and Friday. Now, the player that I'm happy is back is Marshawn Lattimore, because apparently he could have gone last week. He had the hamstring deal, but we all pretty much knew he wasn't going to go last week. So to get him back after just a 1 week absence is huge, because he don't take 1 week off when he gets injured. He don't take 1 week off. So him being back is huge. And then look, the secondary was fantastic last week. Even without him, that's not a bad wide receiver group over in Dallas, and they shut him down. I mean, they really shut him down. So getting Lattimore back is huge and just makes arguably the deepest unit on the team even deeper.
I agree with you on Taysom and Lattimore. One name that does concern me a bit that may be flying under the radar because Taysom is on the injury report, and that's Will Harris. Will Harris did not practice on Thursday. He practiced in a limited fashion today on Friday. Will Harris had 2 big hits against the Dallas Cowboys. One was on CeeDee Lamb in the end zone, which probably prevented a touchdown. And another one, if I remember correctly, was on 3rd down to get the defense off the field.
Yeah.
Will Harris had the interception in the first game on
Bryce
Young.
Right?
First play of the season for the defense on Bryce Young, the diving interception. We talked about the safety opposite of Tyrann Mathieu in the offseason potentially being a weakness. Hey, even Dennis Allen talked about it, saying nobody had at that point stepped up and really made a claim like, this is my job. Well, so far early in the season, Will Harris has been very solid at that safety position. So potentially missing him, you do still have Jordan Howden. Jordan Howden has played well. He got an interception earlier this season as well. But missing Will Harris and the physicality that he brings to the team, that could be problematic.
Yeah, and the tell will be Sunday, or maybe today, or maybe it's tomorrow when we get the standard elevations. If they pull up Jonathan Abram, we'll know that that's not looking good for Will Harris. But I agree with you, because I think Will Harris has been probably one of the more underrated players on the team thus far, because there's been such a spotlight on the offense and the defensive players like Chase Young and Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis, Pete Werner, those guys. But he's actually had a really good start, and I think he's kind of solidified that starting role. Jordan Howden's getting in when they go to those dime groupings on 3rd and long or 3rd and medium, when that DA likes to put 6 DBs on the field. But I agree with you. I think the Will Harris injury is something to certainly monitor, because I think he just fits in really well with his versatility, what he's able to do. It's also works in the Saints' favor that A.J. Brown is officially out. Yep. So there's no need to worry about that. I know they had a plan for him, a plan without him. I think this is huge, not just for A.J. Brown's ability to be explosive and get downfield and make big plays. We know that. I think without him, it's one less receiver to worry about, but it's you might be able to commit a little bit more to the run game without the threat of A.J. Brown over the top, whatever the case may be, catching and going, whatever the case may be. And maybe you're able to devote a little bit more to the run game, dual threat run game of Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, as opposed to maybe in certain situations you would have had to play the too high type situation just to guard against what could be a big play from A.J. Brown. So I think that's a huge development for the Saints. And then C.J. Gardner-Johnson, right?
Yes.
He's listed as questionable. Come on.
Yeah,
Come on.
we know.
Come on.
You're
This
not
guy's
missing
been
that
watching.
game.
If I recall correctly, he couldn't play with Detroit last year when they came here. I think he was hurt.
Mm-hmm.
He ain't missing the game.
Yeah.
He ain't missing this game. So, yeah, he might be listed as questionable. But GJ is going to be here. There's no doubt about it. And watch it, Saints. Watch it. There is no doubt in my mind that man's going to try to provoke you. He's going to try to do something to get under your skin. Do not take the bait. You should know more about him than anyone else because he pulled all those tricks against your opponents and you were up close and personal with him for 3 years, whatever it was when he was here. So do not take the bait. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to try. But, look, when he's on the field, he's a good player.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw that fourth down stop, and he's a guy that, could potentially be on the field. They could match him up with a guy like Taysom in certain situations. He's big enough and strong enough to maybe handle that. So he's a good football player, but don't take the bait because he's going to try. And he seems, for as much as everyone knows it's coming,
it works.
Somehow, some way, he always draws a flag on whoever he's playing against.
Man, who would have thought 2 weeks into the season, early, sure, but 2 weeks into the season, who would have thought that two of the best teams, you could argue the two best teams in the NFL, would reside in the NFC South?
Right.
You've got the Saints playing out of their mind, and a team that continues to go under the radar. I think they were in the offseason, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Very similar to the Saints. You could draw a lot of parallels, and Baker Mayfield, a quarterback who you would typically rank as being in that Derek Carr vicinity if you're ranking quarterbacks. He's playing above that. They've got a defense that's playing out of their mind. Their offense is dynamic. They beat Washington, just like the Saints beat a very beatable team in Carolina week 1. They beat Washington week 1. Saints get an impressive win against the Cowboys in week 2. Buccaneers get an impressive win against the Detroit Lions in week 2. And the team that the Eagles play next in week 4, that'll be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think we're building towards a very interesting matchup between the Saints and the Bucs. Not to get too far ahead, but that does happen in week 6.
Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, I predicted Tampa Bay to win the division because I felt like they were still good enough, and they didn't lose much. I thought Baker's been a good fit despite the loss of Canales over to Carolina. One other thing, Philly's coming off of a short week, tough loss. They had that game. I mean, you watched them, sure. I mean, that game. I thought the game was over. I mean, I almost kind of changed it because I almost kind of half-heartedly watched the third down play. A, I thought they were running it. B, if they threw it, I thought Saquon was going to catch it. And C, even if he somehow missed it and kicked the field goal, ain't no way Kirk Cousins was leading the Falcons back. But guess what? He missed it. He dropped it. They kicked the field goal. And Kirk Cousins was that was his best drive of the game. And you could tell he's not 100% with the way he's moving or lack thereof with Kirk Cousins. So it's a short week where they have to travel. I've always been one to say when you got to play on a short week, it's so much better to be at home. They're coming off of a short week and they got to travel. So that's just something to watch. If I recall, they didn't even have a full practice Wednesday. It was more one of those walk-through, estimated type practices. So that should be interesting going forward.
Definitely, and something else that'll be interesting going into that game, a player to watch to me is a guy we haven't talked about yet, and that's Willie Gay. This is going to be the big test for Willie Gay. This is why they brought you here. They didn't bring Willie Gay here. I mean, I'm sure he does a lot of things well. We know that, but Willie Gay in Kansas City was the guy who they turned to. They had a whole separate package for him when it came to stopping mobile quarterbacks. When it came to going against the Lamar Jacksons and the Josh Allens, the Jalen Hurtses, it was Willie Gay who they turned to help them kind of corral those guys. So now the Saints bring him in to help fix one of their most glaring problems on defense. This is your game, Willie Gay Jr. You need to keep that guy, Jalen Hurts, in the pocket because I don't think that he's been phenomenal through 2 weeks. He looked average at best against Green Bay. Now, you could say that was in Brazil. They had a lot of issues with the field.
He makes one or two boneheaded plays a game. Yeah. Just like, what are you doing, Jalen?
And those games, when your offense is scoring 91 points through 2 weeks, you don't get a lot of boneheaded plays.
No, you don't. I'm curious how DA is good of a chess master as it is when it comes to, strategy and personnel and that sort of thing. Like, how does he blend this in? Because Gay has not played as he's been the strong side backer, so he's gotten on the field, but he hasn't gotten nearly as many snaps as the other two linebackers. So is this a game where he plays more? And if he does play more, is it more three backers? Are you pulling Pete Werner off the field? Are you pulling a defensive lineman off the field? How are you playing this? And how much do you have to play this? Because you can't just do spy the whole time. Right. So that's certainly something to watch going forward. You mentioned something earlier. I don't know why it just popped in my head. Because obviously we cover the Saints, but we're very in tune with the NFC South, and we talked about Tampa. We talked about Falcons for a second, but that Will Harris interception on the first play of the season, for Bryce Young, you just wonder if it was all over for him right there. Because I can't imagine, had it not been so bad to start the game in New Orleans for Carolina, maybe he doesn't lose his job, but maybe they hold off a couple of weeks before they pull the plug on Bryce Young.
In Carolina, there was a lot of buzz on Bryce Young, and I'm very tapped into that fan base. There was a lot of offseason buzz about Bryce Young. All the training camp reports said he's looking phenomenal. He only played in one drive in the preseason, which is crazy to me, but only one drive. They said he looked great. Now here he comes, first play of the season. He overthrows him by 10, 15 yards and into an interception. You can even see him smiling after the play on the TV broadcast, and it's like, man, what are you doing? What's going through this guy's head? And it was all downhill from there. I think he hasn't played very well. His confidence is shot, and now we get to see former New Orleans Saint Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, come in, and I think he'll win some games.
They're going to win games with Andy Dalton, I'm telling you. That's a decent offensive line with some decent playmakers. They're going to win games with Andy Dalton. They might win it. Who did they play this week?
The Raiders. I think they beat the Raiders this week.
They got a shot to win the game this
Bryce
week.
Young, see, they messed up their pick. Bryce Young was going to get the number one
Bryce Young's getting
pick.
now what he should have got last year. He was not ready. They should have taken their time. You don't have to start every single rookie quarterback right away. Not everybody's built to handle that, especially when you have a little bit of adversity. Well, we're running up on the time here. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. We're running up on it. So for Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.